Hey y'all. So I'm Julia Craven, and this is Conversations with Julia. Um, and today I am chatting with Victoria Walker, the points, miles, and deals reporter at the Points Guy. And I'm so happy that you could join me today for this installment. We are going to talk about her amazing journey towards becoming a Black travel reporter, why she considers racism abroad when planning trips, and how COVID 19 has impacted that space. And next week, I'll be back to talk with someone else who is making strides in their respective field. So, hey, Vicky, thanks again.
Hello, Julia. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And so, let's just hop right in it because I know your fascinating background story, but everybody else does not. So, tell us the origin of your interest in travel, how that get started.
So, I grew up traveling pretty extensively, but not in the ways that a lot of people in this travel space and in this points and mile space started traveling. So, we did a lot of road trips. So, we would go from travel from Virginia to Disney World. We would drive everywhere. We didn't fly. Nobody in my family flies. We did Texas a few times. We did Las Vegas twice. We did Los Angeles and San Francisco once, all driving. So, 12 of us in a 16 passenger van, 3 days on the road, staying in, Best Westerns along the way, eating at like Bob Evans. I know you know what I'm talking about,
Driving to
Julia.
California.
driving to California, driving to California. So
Ooh.
that really sparked my interest in travel. I really started to travel in the way that I travel now in college. I said one of the things that I was very adamant about when I got to college was I wanted to have the opportunity to travel. And
Mhm.
luckily, I really had great opportunities to travel. I went to Haiti twice for a community service project. I went to Ghana. I went to Germany. I went to Dubai. And that really kind of sparked my interest in like international travel because I didn't have the opportunity to travel around the world when I was a kid. And, that's a thing that a lot of people who occupy this travel space had, the luxury of doing when they were growing up, traveling
Mhm.
around the world at 5. And I didn't have that opportunity to do that. And so I wanted to make sure that when I got to college, um, I would have the opportunity to travel. And luckily, when I was in college, I got Howard to pay. I went to Howard University. I got Howard to pay for my trips. I would go as like the student photographer. And so that kind of, was the catalyst that kind of like pushed me to get more into the space. Um, then when I graduated from college, took a job in at a newspaper in Washington D.C. And this was the height of the presidential elections, and so I didn't have the opportunity to travel
Mhm.
as much as I did when I was in college. But I would take advantage of flight deals, cheap flights to Malaysia, cheap flights to South Africa, anything that would, get me to where I wanted to go. And on the side, I started a travel blog because I wanted something that I saw a whole lot of people with travel blogs, a whole lot of people with travel vlogs, and
Mhm.
none of them there were very few Black people who occupied the space. And there were very few people who
Right.
occupied flight deal space, which is how I got into kind of the work that I do now. Um, and so I started my travel blog, Vicky Ventures, really as a way to highlight Black women and people of color in the travel space, write about flight deals, but also I think the most important thing to me at the time was making travel feel accessible to people, meeting people where they are, and giving them the space, the opportunity to plan the dream trip, whatever that looks like for them. So my dream trip would be to like the Seychelles, but other people's dream trips it could just be to like, it could just be to like, Myrtle Beach or Cancun. And I wanted to, whatever your dream trip was, I wanted to make it easy for you to be able to plan it.
Right. And so I am just having a visual of you and your aunties and your grandma all in this
Yeah.
car
Yes.
going across the country to Los Angeles. And that's astounding to me. My family took a road trip from Moultrie, Georgia to New
Mhm.
York, and that was about 16 hours, and that
Yeah.
has nothing on 3 days.
3 days. 3 days we stopped. The second time we went to Las Vegas, we stopped in Tennessee, and then we stopped again in Flagstaff, Arizona. This is also kind
Mhm.
of the reason I hate road trips now, because I was in
Yeah.
the middle because I'm the youngest, so I have no space. This is pre like nice cell phones, so I had like a CD player. It was
And you were
we
playing Snake, yeah.
I was playing Snake, and we had Kirk Franklin's album came out. What's the one with the blue title? And we played that the entire 3 days on the road. To this day, I can't listen to the album. This is the album with Imagine Me on it, and I cannot listen to that album to this day. Um, like I remember we played "Looking for You" as we were like driving over, like through the Hoover Dam, and I like to this day I get like a visceral reaction when I hear a lot of songs from that album. But yeah, I got to see the world in a different lens, just not from being, a lot of people see the world overhead, but I got to see the world,
Mhm.
um, you know, got to actually, see the country. And we made stops. We went to Oklahoma City, where the site of the Oklahoma City bombing, which I was too young for it. And, my family gave context. Went to Obviously went to the Hoover Dam, went to LA. It was the first time I'd been to LA, first time I'd ever been on the West
Mhm.
Coast. And then went to San Francisco for a day, and then it rained. Um, but yeah, that's really kind of how I like got into this, type of work.
So how did those experiences inform the work that you do now? Because you mentioned that a big part of this for you is making travel more um, accessible to people who may not understand the space, who may not understand flight
Right.
deals or points and all of this stuff.
Right.
So how does that inform what you do now?
I mean, it's a big aspect to how I think about travel. Like, I'm fairly new in the point to mile space, and in comparison to a lot of people who've been doing this for the last 10 years, I didn't have a credit card 10
Hmm.
years ago. I don't know a lot of people who have credit cards or multiple credit cards, just because, you know, so many of us are taught that credit cards are predatory, and for a lot of people who look like me, that is the case. And
Yes.
so I want to kind of break down, meet people where they are. As I was saying before, not everybody has the dream to go to the Maldives, and not everybody has the dream to go to Paris or Tokyo. Whatever your dream is, wherever your dream is, it could be to Hampton, Virginia, which is where I'm from. I want to make it as clear as possible to meet you wherever, financially you are, or whatever your skill set, or, whether you're in the planning stages, whether you're planning on booking right now. I want to meet people, where they are. And that's, just not seeing that early on in my career, especially in the travel space, has really informed it has really informed me to like do that work now.
Hmm. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, of course. That was your uncle. Um, so walk
I know
us
what's up.
through. Hi, Marcellus. We love you. Um, walk us through planning a trip. What does that look
So
like for you?
it looks a little different now than it did when I was earlier on in my career. Um, I get a lot of my inspiration from the travel Facebook groups that I'm in, which are predominantly Black people or people of color, or from Instagram. I got the big idea to like go to the Seychelles last year, because I saw like all these travel bloggers, and not just like travel influencers, but like, people who, Black people who travel. Um, I
Yeah.
saw them like, here's how I got to the Seychelles. I'm staying in an over water bungalow, and I was like, I want to do that. So I first think about obviously the climate in which I'm going. Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be hot? And then sometimes, when I travel, I'm fine with it being cold. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I just really want to be on a beach. And so
Yeah.
after I decide, okay, I want to go to, I mean, my last trip was Mexico City. After I go to Mexico City, or after, I've decided I want to go to Mexico City, then I start looking for hotels. For me personally, I don't mind flying economy. Most of my like trips are economy, but I do prefer to stay in pretty nice hotels. Partly because I do a lot of solo travel, so I never feel safe with hostels. Super safe with hostels, and I try and avoid Airbnbs when I travel solo. And so I decide, okay, do I want to be close to the action? Do I want to be close to where food is? Do I want to be, um, do I want to ball out? And after I decide the hotel, then I make kind of a rough sketch of an itinerary, but I don't actually really do an itinerary. I basically like on the flight there, I'm like, okay, I want to see this, I want to eat this, I want to do this, and then I just kind of like let the day, you know, take me where it takes me. I typically never stay any place longer than 4 days. And so I have a day
Hmm.
where anywhere I go, I'm the absolute tourist. So like I do like the big bus tours, just like, I'm like the mom with the fanny pack. Um, and I spend like a whole day, I'm serious. I spend like a whole day just being like a complete, like, the typical American tourist. And then I do a thing where I eat my way through a city, or I eat my way through a country. And then I have like a day where I'll do like museums. And then any place I go to, I really try and find like Black people anywhere I go. Anywhere
Right.
I go, I try and find like, either like a Black American restaurant or an African restaurant or some sort of like, because I mean, Black people are everywhere. And so
Right.
I try and find, that sort of influence any place I go to.
Right. And so just to go off of that, how do you factor in racism? Because there are some countries where it's going to be
Yeah,
worse than it will,
yeah,
like, say you might have a bigger problem in Croatia than you would have in Iceland.
right. So I think the interesting thing, people ask me about like race and travel all the time, especially people I meet abroad. They're like, how it, is it like, more racist in the US than it is abroad? And I mean, that's kind of a subjective question. But, some of the like most racist experiences I've had have been abroad. I'm thinking back to 2016. I was in Thailand with two of my homegirls. We were on our way back, and we ran into a bit of an immigration problem in that we were transiting via Vietnam on our way back to the United States. And so I was on the phone with the State Department. This is when I was early on in like my travel experiences. So I didn't really know like,
Hmm.
a lot of like the like, visa rules or what have you. And remember we were on the phone with the State Department, trying to get clarity on, whether we would be able to board our flight and go back to the US. And I realized I was in time. We were at the airport, and I realize that a lot of people have really not seen Black people, especially outside of the context of like television. So we got
Yeah.
like stares, which truthfully I'm fine. I'm fine with that. But, we're on the phone with the State Department, and, I'm at this point, I'm freaking out because our flight is about to board in like 90 minutes. Um, and there are these three guys, like, kind of standing maybe like 8 feet away from us, and they keep like motioning at us in like a way, basically insinuating that we were prostitutes and that, like, we wanted to sleep with them. And I'm like,
Mm,
and so I go off because I'm already like, just stressed. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get on this flight. And it was just gross, and it was like dehumanizing, and it kind of just like put a
yeah,
damper on, what had been a really great travel experience. So, and anytime I plan a trip, I'm always cognizant of how I will be perceived, not just as a Black person, but particularly as a Black woman. Um,
right,
I, there are some countries that are, to be frank, kind of on the bottom of my list. And there are some countries that I visited where I know people who have said they've had negative experiences as Black women, and I'm thinking Italy in this context. And then I was like, okay, I went to Italy and I had a fairly normal experience. For the most part, people ignored me, but that does not take away from like how other people have been perceived. And so that's always at the back of my mind, like, how I move through the world is a lot different than a lot of people who are travel writers who get to move through the world. And I'm also just, mindful of my own privilege. I've been far too many places where, I have been treated at first glance, been gotten poor service or been treated horribly. And so I open my mouth and I sound like an American. And
right,
that's a privilege that I really realized I had when I was traveling, for all of the horrible things that Black people experience in the US and abroad for that matter. We still have the privilege of Americanness and a US
yeah,
passport. And so
right,
I've been places, nobody wants to help me, nobody wants to do anything. And so, I sound very clearly like an American. And then it's like,
right,
oh, you're not one of them, as in referring to like people from the continent. And I'm just like, yeah, no, like, bruh, like, don't treat me like that and don't treat other people like that. And
right.
so it's really informed my like perceptions of like how I move through like the world as a Black traveler. Because even in the lens of Blackness, there are still notable exceptions.
Right. Everyone has, for the most part, everyone has some kind of privilege.
Right.
Um, and I didn't realize that being an American was such a huge privilege until I went to
Yeah.
college and I majored in international politics. And it's just like, oh, wow. Like, it's a really, like, you get treated differently abroad if
Oh yeah.
you, like you said, have a US passport. It's just a different experience for you.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, how would you advise? Well, let's wind back a bit. Um, because one thing that we haven't gotten into is the fact that you know how to get deals. You mentioned this,
Yeah.
but you didn't really explain like how you be paying $3 for a trip to the Seychelles. Like you didn't talk about that. And so
Um.
I do want to get into that because it's fascinating how you use points and miles and like it's just yeah. Do you?
So, my kind of obsession with flight deals, to just kind of go back in time, happened Christmas Day 2014, when Etihad had this amazing mistake fare, like it was absolutely insane mistake fare to Abu Dhabi from Washington, New York,
Glitchgate
LA, or
2014.
the Glitch State 2014. That's when I was like, okay, I'm definitely gonna like get into this like travel space. Um, we flew Etihad Airways from Washington D.C. Dulles Airport to Abu Dhabi for $256, which is typically that at that time that flight would have been in either $800 or $900 trip. And it
Yeah.
really really sparked my interest in traveling, because one thing that I specifically remember about that experience is there were so many people who took advantage of this flight deal who had never traveled before. There were people who were like, I don't even have a passport, I'm gonna just figure it out. Or people who were like, I'm gonna take my mother is like been working for 40 years and she really wants to go like on vacation. It's like I'm taking my mom on vacation. And that's when I realized that traveling was not this thing that you had that only the wealthy had access to. Because we were three broke college students. I booked that ticket on a debit card. Three broke college students who skipped our midterms. I had maybe $300 to my name. Um,
Hmm.
and we still went to Abu Dhabi. It was for my 23rd, 22nd or 23rd birthday. And it was just an amazing experience because I got to see like there were other people on the flight who were like, "Yo, we got the same deal!" And like the flight attendants were like, "Oh my God, you guys like, did you guys book the deal?" Like it was just like a really amazing experience. But I, now what, 5 years from now, I'm still apt to jump on a flight deal. I do a lot of searching through Google Flights. I kind of have a base estimate of how much a flight would usually cost. And I'm kind of speaking into like pre-pandemic terms, but like,
Hmm.
sometimes usually you can, if you're based in New York, you can get a flight to London for under $500. Occasionally, you might see it for like 205. Um, you might see San Juan, Puerto Rico, typically at 215. Occasionally, you can see that for
Hmm.
$78, and like on a main carrier too. So like an American, like a United, like a JetBlue, like a Delta. And so I start my morning 6 a.m. like looking for like flight deals, playing around with routes on Google Flights through Skyscanner,
Hmm.
on Twitter. Looking, I have like um list on Twitter that like just searches for airfares and cheap flight deals. And that's really how I've been successful. As I've gotten older, though, I am more apt, and especially as I get to, gotten into the points and mile space, to book a lot of trips on points. And so looking for those routes. Just before the pandemic, I was I had a week off, and I was like, I'm not sure if I want to stay in New York. And then I was like, I might.
Hmm.
I'm thinking about going to Bogota or Mexico City, and had a bunch of points from a couple of my American Express cards. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Mexico City. Why not? And so I booked my flight on Delta going down, and then Aeromexico Business going back up for 54,000 miles, and then I stayed at the Hyatt Regency in Mexico City that I booked using Chase points, 36,000 Chase points. And those I just from like looking and just from having like an idea of where I wanted to go, I was able to piece together an entire trip. And for the most part, I mean, other than taxes, my my stay was, yeah, it was like free. $54 for the
Yeah.
flight for taxes, after I booked with miles. And then, obviously, kind of the security deposit you pay at a hotel. But I was
Yeah.
upgraded immediately on arrival because I have Hyatt status. And yeah, that's really how I got like, that's how I've got, been able to find either flight deals or, booking things with points and miles. Before the pandemic, I had this big plan to do like a round the world trip on points and miles, like kind of pulling together all
Yeah.
of my loyalty programs, all of my transferable currency programs, so American Express and Chase, and then just flying around the world. I was planning on flying from New York to Tokyo, on ANAs. Like they have one of the best business classes in the world. And I was going to fly Etihad from Seoul to Abu Dhabi on one of the best first class products in the world. And then I was going to hop around the Middle East for a few days and then fly from Doha to New York, using American Airlines miles, booked via Qatar Airways, and one of which is we at TPG consider the best business class. product in the world. You know, the pandemic has kind of
Hmm.
changed all of that, but
Yeah.
it's really amazing to see what you can do with points and miles.
So how is the pandemic affecting travel
The
outside of the obvious?
I mean, outside of the obvious, um, I mean, it's a lot of experts say that they don't expect the travel industry to go back to pre-pandemic levels until at least 2023, I believe. I mean, we're
Hmm.
seeing employees get, airline employees get furloughed, hotel employees get furloughed, but we're also starting to see some, signs of like life from the travel industry, and that people are still very excited about travel, even if they can't do it right now, but people are still very excited about travel. And for the people traveling now, we're seeing, you know, um, a lot of countries in the Caribbean reopen to US
Hmm.
travel. We saw Antigua reopen. We saw Jamaica reopen, Barbados, which I believe never closed. And so, I mean, it's going to be years before we see like pre-pandemic levels. But I think the important thing to note
Yeah.
is this is a really interesting time to be not just an American traveler, but American. Americans are so
Yeah.
unused to being told no and not having access, and they're unused to not having access to spaces that have historically been always open to them. The U.S. is typically the country that denies access to people. In recent years, we've
Right.
seen that the U.S. has denied access to citizens in countries that based on its perceived security threats, and now we're seeing other countries saying we don't want American citizens. And so I think it's been very interesting to watch, the U.S. passport to be seen as the most one of the most lucrative passports to have. Um,
Hmm.
it's very interesting to see that not being the case right now.
Right. Absolutely. And so I did see news reports of a plane full of Americans. I think it was in Italy, just kind of being stopped and being like, "Whoa."
Yeah, turn around. Yeah.
Like, whoa, like,
And
nah, like, y'all,
that's
so what happened with that?
um I'm not in I know I read the headline, I didn't read the actual story, but that's something we'll probably see more
Hmm.
of. Um there are always going to be people who want to flout the rules, and the rules don't apply to them, and there will always be countries who say no, we're going to send you right back to where you were. um I
Right.
think it's just important to note that if you do plan to travel, and and I'm speaking for myself here, I don't have any trips planned for the foreseeable future. That hurts. Um, you know, Travel's been so central to my life in the last 5 years and really my entire life. But I will be fine without traveling. But if you do have travel plan, especially international travel plan, it's going to be really important that you understand that it's not going to be the same normal vacation that you are used to taking, and that it's going to be on you to not just protect yourself, but protect people in other countries, especially countries that do not have the healthcare systems that we do. And so that
Right.
if you are dead set on traveling, just know that it's going to be on you to make sure that you're like staying on your P's and Q's, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're social distancing, you're wearing a mask, you're not having big hotel parties, you're just going about your kind of day-to-day business and just being smarter about it. Because that's the thing. I did a story a couple of weeks ago where um tourism boards like, we want travelers to come, it's central to our economies, we want them to come, we want them to be smart about it.
Right. And is that the case in the Caribbean where a lot of these countries are still developing and they might not have
Right,
the infrastructure if it were a big
right.
outbreak?
right. And in a lot of, I think Jamaica's prime minister, or somebody high up in the Jamaican government, said that they didn't really have they didn't have a really choice. There wasn't really a choice in reopening. Again, tourism is so central to the Caribbean, and so knowing that if you are planning a trip, then it's important to really be on your best behavior. Because in a lot of these
Right.
countries, like Antigua, for instance, like we don't in the U.S. we don't have anything that we don't have, a federal law or mandate that says, everyone must wear a mask, but in Antigua they do. And so, if you're going to go to if you're going to go to those countries, then it's going to be prudent for you to follow the local laws.
Right. Which kind of scares me because and I'm just posturing here, but it seems like the people who are most open to traveling are the same people who are not taking it as seriously stateside and thus might not be as inclined to wear a mask. Again, I'm just connecting dots that I've seen. Um, but my last question for you, and you know where this is going. Um, well, one, what do pet owners do when you have a pet who can't travel with you for a myriad of reasons? And can the world meet Migo?
um,
Migo is
I actually
Vicky's
have not.
dog.
I've been, thinking about a life after the pandemic in which I do decide to travel.
Hmm.
My pre-pandemic, pre-pandemic plan usually was to leave Migo with a roommate, or leave Migo with um, a dog sitter. I don't really know how that's going to work right now, especially as we're kind of like in the throes of the pandemic. Um, I do have like friends who are always willing to watch me go. And it would just, in that case, if I did decide to go someplace, I would just wipe down everything that I own, including Migo. Um, and Migo, come here, come here, come here. He was sleeping on my leg. Oh God, this is the boy.
That's Migo,
Say
y'all.
hi, world. Say hi, world.
Hi, Migo.
It's Auntie
Oh, he's
Julia.
so cute.
So annoying.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. For some reason, he's caught up in you. Um, so I don't think I have any more questions for you, but we did get a few questions from our viewers, and Maya asked, "What is your personal risk assessment for traveling in a post-COVID world?" It's a good question.
So we're already, and we're not in a post-COVID world now, but we are starting to see. Okay, you gotta go. Um, we
He's
are.
a little he's a little loud.
Is a lot of loud.
He's a little
We are starting. We're not in a post-COVID world yet, but we are starting to see what a post-COVID world will look like. So
hmm
we can expect to see that, hotels, for instance, really stepping up on cleaning. So I spoke to Antigua's director of tourism, who told me that hotels in Antigua, they are pretty much really implementing social distancing, in that like you're now checking in online, you're not having like the bellhop like deliver your luggage to like your room. You're spraying down luggage. After they clean each room, your room is like sealed with a sticker, so you know that like nobody like tampered with it. um it's that's something that we're going to see, kind of rolling. That's something I can expect we can see rolling out, kind of universal. We're seeing, airlines blocking middle seats on flights. But
hmm
I would guess my personal risk assessment is, I mean, it depends. it's for me, it's kind of, vaccine. But other than that, what are the, like, if I do decide to fly, what are the, like, social distancing uh, things that are being implemented, or what are, how serious, if I'm going to a country, for instance, how serious are they taking social distancing? But
Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting because for some countries we just might not be allowed for a while, and so that's just gonna be that. Um, yeah.
Yeah. You can't fault a government for actually, governing. So, the next question we have is, what is your advice to all the people sitting on credits from trips that were canceled because of the coronavirus?
Yeah.
When should they book?
So
When should they try to travel?
so especially with credits in particular, if, let's say, you had a trip to Rio de Janeiro in August. If your airline cancels that ticket, you are eligible for a full refund. The
Hmm.
airlines are required to give you a full refund. So in a lot of cases, you'll see airlines try and offer you credits, or they'll try and offer you miles, or they'll, try and offer you certificates. But if the airline cancels, you are entitled to a full refund. And so in some cases, the airlines will make it easy for you. Just tweet them, they'll, DM them your confirmation number, and they'll institute a credit. Some airlines, you may have to dispute with your credit card. You may have to file claims with the Department of Transportation. In that case, I did that with Kenya Airways when my flight to the Seychelles got canceled. I went through the normal channels of obviously trying to get my money back. The airline canceled the ticket. I emailed the airline. I tweeted the airline. I sent a Facebook message to the airline. I disputed with my credit card, and then finally I filed a complaint with DOT. Um, but if you did take the credit, in a lot of cases you have a year to use it. It's just important to be mindful that if you do want your money back, then you're going to, the airline's going to have to cancel it, and you're going to, like, in a lot of cases they're not going to automatically give you your money back. And so that's kind of important to keep in mind. But you are entitled to a full refund, no matter what the airline says. If the airline cancels your ticket for any reason, they owe you money. They owe you bread, and get your bread.
Get the bank on them,
Yeah.
because I do love sending Capital One to handle whatever it is I need handled. And so one last question for you. What are some of your favorite credit cards and points loyalty programs?
Yeah. So in terms of credit cards, my favorite card, like my go-to card, is the Amex Gold. Before the pandemic, but definitely during the pandemic, because you get four points per dollar spent on supermarkets, which obviously in the pandemic I'm spending a lot of money at, and like dining. Um, in
Hmm.
a, I would say, pre-pandemic world, when I was traveling extensively, the Amex Platinum, because you would get 5 points per dollar spent on flights, and you would also have access to priority pass lounges, which I utilized a lot just to get work done, or just like have a quiet spot to like chill at before my flight. The Centurion lounges, which are the American Express lounges, TSA and global pre-check, global entry, TSA pre-check and global entry credits. Um, in terms of my favorite loyalty programs, I'm a big, in terms of hotels, big World of Hyatt fan. Um, Big World of Hyatt fan. I get a lot of, you get a lot of the hotels are fairly nice for the number of points you need to redeem. Even though Hyatt points are incredibly difficult to earn, that's kind of my go-to. In terms of airlines, I'm a big fan of British Airways Avios for short haul domestic flights and some short haul international flights. but American Airlines. And for American, I'm kind of speaking to a pre-pandemic world in that Etihad First Class and Qatar Q Suites and Qantas, you had access to book those flights through American. But yeah, that's for me like Hyatt, um, definitely Hyatt, and definitely American.
And one tip I learned from you is whatever program you decide on, stick with it. Don't
Yeah, I mean,
airline hop.
stick with it, and definitely use the airlines shopping portal to just get like rack up a ton of miles.
Delta Sky Miles has a portal, y'all. If you're a part of
They all do.
whatever aviation
Yeah.
family Delta's a
Yeah,
part
like
of.
so if you fly American exclusively, there's the American shopping portal. If you fly Southwest, there's the Southwest shopping portal. United, they all have shopping portals.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Vicky. I really appreciate you
Yeah,
giving us some of your time today. It's always good to see you. It's always good to see me go. Um, and so, yeah.
always good.
And to everyone, always good to see. Oh, he's still so cute. He just be breathing hard on air. Um,
Yeah,
and to everyone watching at home, I appreciate y'all too. And I hope you have a good day. Go take a walk, wear a mask. All right. Bye, y'all.
wear a mask.